Hey, Warrior Saints, good morning. Happy Thursday. Glad to have you, beautiful people, in at our Crucifixional Lifestream. We are going to have some fun today. Just don't forget, visit us, warriorsaints.org. Subscribe to the Way of the Warrior Saint. You can join our movement. You can also grab a copy of your book, all there at warriorsaints.org. Today, so as you know, we are a ministry of the Warrior Saints movement. We are Orthodox Christians, right? Our team. And in the Orthodox Church, today, September 9, we celebrate something called the Synaxis of Joachim and Anna. So I'll talk about that just in one moment, because yesterday is one of the great feasts in the church. It is the nativity, or the birthday, of the Theotokos. September 8 is the birthday, the nativity of the Virgin Mary. And with that, the celebration kind of rolls over into today, which is with, some like key players, if you will. Joachim and Anna are the parents of the Virgin Mary, of the Theotokos, who will give birth to Christ on December 25th. That being said, the conversation about the birth, the nativity of the Theotokos, brings to mind an oft confused doctrine between Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy, and that's something called the Immaculate Conception. So I figured let's talk about it today. What do each of these two churches teach, and what do they believe about them, and why? So first, let's talk about the idea of the Immaculate Conception. Many people, even in my parish, have come to me over the years and said, well, the Orthodox believe in the Immaculate Conception. And I said, unless you're talking about Franco Harris and the Immaculate Reception, no, we don't believe in that stuff. These guys are cheering and booing over here. All right, you're welcome. I got that in for Greg.
Thank you.
Greg got his Steelers reference.
We love you, Sammer.
So, the Immaculate Conception is not Orthodox dogma, doctrine, teaching, understanding, belief. It is Roman Catholic. All right, so the Roman Catholic Church put that forward, and I believe, and I may be wrong if I am, for our Catholic brothers and sisters, forgive, but I believe that that's only as recent as the Vatican Councils. So that is not a doctrine in the Roman Catholic Church, since the time of the split in the 11th century. But it goes like this. When Adam and Eve were in the garden, and they committed the original sin by disobeying God's commandments, eating from the tree that they were not supposed to, that sin comes into the world, right? So sin is now open in the world, and the world is exposed by this original sin. And the guilt of Adam's sin, so the guilt of Adam and Eve's original sin, is transmitted to the next generation through sexual intercourse. What that means is, when Adam and Eve come together, Cain and Abel, both gone out of the story, they have another son through their progeny, through their sexual intercourse, Seth, and the guilt of that sin is passed to Seth. Seth, subsequently, when he has sex with his wife, passes it to the next generation, and so on. All of a sudden, you get to Jesus, and you're like, wait a minute, what? If it's transmitted that way, will the Virgin Mary not have that guilt within her to pass on to Jesus, right? Even though she was a virgin, but she would be guilty of original sin because it was passed from generation to generation, all the way from Adam and Eve, and it would have been in the Virgin Mary, and she therefore would have had no choice but to pass that guilt to Christ. Christ can't be guilty because he's the Son of God, impure, and all that kind of stuff. So the Roman Catholic Church came up with a doctrine called the Immaculate Conception, which means that her parents, the Virgin Mary's parents, they conceived her without sexual intercourse. She was immaculately conceived, in a pure way, thus terminating that transmission of the guilt of original sin. So the Virgin Mary would be free from that, therefore not able to pass it to Jesus Christ, right? So that's the idea, the theology that the Roman Catholic Church uses about, or teaches about, Immaculate Conception. The Orthodox Church rejects this teaching for the following reasons, which I'll talk about right now. In the Garden of Eden, that original sin, when Adam and Eve disobeyed God's commandments, ate from the tree that they were not supposed to, they brought sin into the world. Now, the world is fallen. The world has suffered a scar, if you will, because of that original sin. As you can see in Genesis chapter 3, when Adam and Eve eat, listen to what God says. He says to the serpent, you're going to go on your belly. He says to Eve, you're going to have pain in childbirth. What does he say to Adam? Cursed is the ground because of you, right? Cursed is the earth, the land, because of you. Because of Adam's sin, the whole creation, the land, that which is the mother, if you will, that gives life, the source of all bread and wheat and food and trees and plants and animals, all the sustenance, the whole world is tainted because of their sin, because of original sin. The next person, i.e. Adam and Eve's children, in this case Seth, and their subsequent generations, are not born guilty of Adam's sin. I mean, let's just be honest. Adam did it. Seth didn't. You didn't. I didn't. They did it. But the world suffered. The world was tainted, was broken, fallen because of their sin. And now all subsequent generations are born into that fallen world, that broken world, right? And so now think about it. Like, I always say this joke. I don't need to be guilty of Adam's sin, right? Like, I have enough of my own sins. He can keep his, right? I got to deal with God, and I've got to make amends with him on my own sins. But I am born into a fallen world, not guilty of the first sin, guilty of my own sins, a world that is fallen, tainted, and that's impure, imperfect, right? So as I'm born into that environment, the temptations are there. And I, Father Chris, not worried about Adam, I choose myself either to sin or not to sin. Do you see that? And so this idea of Immaculate Conception and the guilt of Adam's first sin passed all the way to the Virgin Mary, it's an unnecessary theological construct for the Orthodox faith. We don't have to come up with that because the guilt of Adam is not passed sexually. Therefore, Joachim and Anna do not give that to the Virgin Mary, right? Who therefore doesn't have the guilt to pass to Christ. It's that the world in which we are born is fallen because of Adam's decision, his choice, and Eve's choice. The world is fallen, therefore the world you and I are born into is fallen. And so we now have likewise the same choice that Adam and Eve had. Pick the fruit, don't pick the fruit. In other words, disobey God or abide by his commandments. So it's really responsible for you and I. What the Orthodox will not allow, and this is key for Warrior Saints, is we are not going to allow ourselves to pass the blame, therefore the responsibility, to anyone else, including Adam. I'm a sinner because I chose to sin. You're a sinner because you chose to sin. The responsibility for our actions and our behavior is up to us. I mean, look, we're warrior saints. We're not soft pansies running around. It's your fault. It's your fault. If that's for you, go somewhere else. Like, we're not the ministry for you because we're not interested in passing the blame. It is that the world has temptations, struggle, sin that it's presenting to us. We have to be responsible enough to say, I'm going to choose God or I'm going to choose not God, not blame it on anybody else. This is really kind of one of the most essential and important aspects of being a warrior saint, is to remember that all choice is ours. We don't inherit blame, responsibility, guilt from anybody else. We are solely responsible for myself, which is at some point also a beautiful thing, because you know what? I can't control anybody else. I can only control me and my behavior. So if I don't have to worry about Adam and Eve and their sins, but only Father Chris's sins, I got a shot at doing the right thing. Now, and you know me, unfortunately, I don't always do the right thing, but I have a shot to control myself, my behavior. I can either choose to accept or reject the commandments of God. This is crazy, kind of scary, but also beautiful, because it means I have a say. God is the source of all things, but I have a say, albeit small, in my own outcome. Does that make sense? All right, I hope all that rambling makes sense. Here's the good news of all of it, is that as you were trying to decide to accept or reject Christ, to accept or reject God's commandments, you don't have to do that alone, and there is a guide. There is guidance, that there is a teaching, an instructor itself par excellence, which is Holy Scripture, which is the source for all the teachings of warrior saints. You want to know how to do it? You want to know how to be a ferocious warrior saint? Visit warriorsaints.org. That's it. The rest of it is all self-explanatory. We're going to be back tomorrow. Even though it is September 10th tomorrow, we're going to talk about September 11th and celebrate that tragic day in our nation's history. But until then, we invite you to visit us at warriorsaints.org. Be back with us tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific. And as always, keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.